Welcome to Cricket World TV. This is our latest county cricket hotspot with me, John Pennington, and Matt Carter, who I'm delighted to say once again. Good morning, Matt.
Morning, how you doing?
Very, very well. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you very much.
Now, it's a nice, bright and sunny day here in the East Midlands, and we hope that continues. We've got a whole round of fixtures starting tomorrow. But this week, there was a lot of rain around, but that did not stop the drama, did it? Because we had some fantastic cricket being played up and down the country.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it tried its best, the weather, but the amount of wickets that were flying around, particularly in the opening days, it could do little to stop that. I think there was 48 wickets, something, on the opening day of Division 1, which is remarkable stuff, really. And yeah, obviously that rain from the weeks previous made the pitches a little bit spicy, and batting was tough until the later days on some of the grounds.
Now, there is only one place we have to start this week's roundup. We look at the game at Lords, where Middlesex broke a plethora of records, really, to chase down 472 to beat Yorkshire, with Chris Rogers scoring an unbeaten double century. What a remarkable performance, and what a fantastic win for the home side there.
Oh, I mean, it's just as remarkable innings, really, from Rogers. I mean, you can't believe it. We looked at it, we thought it was going to be another tale of Yorkshire coming back from conceding their first inning deficit and showcasing their title ambitions again. And then suddenly Rogers does this. I mean, it's just a once-in-a-lifetime sort of knock, that is. It probably will be the innings of the season, the innings of the past couple of the seasons. I mean, if something is better than that, it's going to take something monumental, really, to oust that. Craig Rogers, I mean, moved his average up to exactly 50 as well, which is something else, which is a remarkable stat, really. And then I think it was Middlesex' third highest chase ever, and the highest chase at Lords by Middlesex since the 8th and 19th century. So it was a stunning innings, and I think what made it even the more remarkable was the actual scoring rate that Middlesex went at. I mean, Rogers, to score those runs at a strike rate of over 80 was just sensational stuff. And Yorkshire, you do wonder if Yorkshire will be wondering whether they should have picked Andrew Gale. I mean, the runs were just flowing non-stop, and there was no way, they just couldn't seem to stop them at all. But that's another case of what if, really, for Yorkshire. I mean, all you can do, really, is congratulate Middlesex on a remarkable victory, really.
Yeah, and quite often when teams, I say quite often, it doesn't happen very often, but when teams do chase down 400, 450, and I think 500 has only ever happened once or twice, it's not often that they do it with so many wickets in hand. So it just goes to show how almost dominant they were in that final innings, which is quite rare to see.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It does tend to be the case. I mean, you never really see sides chasing down 400, 450, 8 to 9 wickets down. And the pitch had flattened out quite considerably by the sound of it. But so you can't take anything away from them. I mean, Yorkshire, you looked at them, and when Gary Balance was smashing it to all parts, it looked like there was only one winner. And it's a tremendous show of belief, and it's a brilliant captain's innings as well from Rogers to lead from the front like that. And it does lay a platform now for Middlesex. They'll be absolutely buzzing with confidence, and suddenly they've won 200 bounce, and they're looking like title contenders now.
Well, for a long time last year they were as well, so spot on. It's a real good boost for them. Moving on to Lancashire beat Northamptonshire this week by 60 runs. A solid performance from them. Disappointing maybe for Northamptonshire, who may at various times thought they were in with a chance there. But how much influence did James Anderson have on this one? Really important for Lancashire to have him for the early part of the season and bowling well.
Yeah, I mean, he got another 10 wickets here, Anderson, and he possibly was the difference. And he also scored 28 in the first innings, which was pretty crucial in the context of the match. I mean, that was Lancashire's top scorer in the first innings. This was a pitch that was really spicy, and I think only Lancashire's second innings scored in excess of 200. But Northamptonshire will be frustrated. It was only a half chance, but in this division, these are the sort of chances that they are going to have to take if they are going to stop up. I mean, against Anderson, even having bowled Lancashire out for 119, I think it was, you've got to back yourself to get a victory from there, even against that attack. And I think Northamptonshire's batting was the problem. When you look at it, I think, and of their top 6, I think on 4 occasions in both the innings, 4 other batsmen didn't get out in excess of double figures, and at the end of the day, that is a big problem. But I'd arguably say the turning point was that partnership between Josh Buttler and Tom Smith. The game was very much in the balance there. I mean, Lancashire had slipped. I think they were 80 in front with just 5 wickets in hand. Had those two departed quickly, then Northamptonshire might have won that game. But Butler proving his worth there with an impressive 70, and Tom Smith as well, who is quietly having an excellent season. I think he averages 38 with a bat and 21 with a ball at the moment, so he is having a wonderful season. But for Northamptonshire, it is frustrating, and I think 3 further players got injured in that game, so it's seemingly endless to their misery, and Sohail Tanvir isn't going to be coming as the overseas player, so it's just, you have to wonder what they've done wrong to have this luck. I mean, it is incredible stuff.
I mean, perhaps the only thing you can say in their favour is that they're not playing this week, so they've got a week maybe for some of those players to recover. But that's scant consolation because we all know that when you lose a game, the best thing to do is to get straight back on the pitch and try and get back on the winning road. So nothing really going right for Northamptonshire. But Lancashire, you mentioned Tom Smith there, he's maybe going to have to take Anderson's wickets and score Butler's runs now because obviously they're off with England now.
Yeah, it's a little bit worrying for Lancashire because, of course, Kyle Hogg, I think, is still injured as well, and he was their leading wicket taker last year, I believe. With the Butler thing, Alex Davis will come in. He's only 19, so it's going to be a big test for him. They didn't retain Gareth Cross because they obviously signed Butler, and it's going to be interesting how they go. They're going to need Horton and Prince to really carry the batting lineup, you'd imagine. But they do have Kyle Jarvis as well on their books, Lancashire, and he had a handy test average for Zimbabwe and did impress, so he should come in and do a decent job, I'd imagine.
Yes, we spoke a little bit about Zimbabwean exiles last week, didn't we? So we'll be keeping an eye on him if he gets a chance. Trent Bridge, what on earth was going on there? Wickets falling all over the place, although Ian Bell played very well. Eventually, Warwickshire beating Nottinghamshire by 98 runs, and the pitch inspector decided that actually everything was okay. What did you make of all that?
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the only consolation for Nottinghamshire that they weren't deducted points because they were pretty poor. But I mean, Ian Bell was the difference in that one. You look at Bell with that 100. I think he scored at a strike rate of near 70. 16 wickets fell on that day, and it just shows you the class of these England players when they do come back. They are a cut above the rest. I think nobody else in that match scored higher than 60 odd, and it was the difference. It was an important win for Warwickshire to finally get off the mark. For Nottinghamshire, it is worrying. I think I had a look yesterday. They've only won one of their last 15 games or something like that, which is an alarming slump, really. And you look at their batsmen, I think Ricky Vessel's average is 38, but apart from that, nobody averages over 30. Look at guys like James Taylor, Michael Lum. I mean, these are good players, Samit Patel, and they're just not getting enough runs. No Nottinghamshire player scored a century yet, and it's only early days, but they did struggle in a relegation battle last year, and it is a little bit alarming that it could be a similar sort of story this year for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Early days, as you say, but Nottinghamshire, yeah, not going particularly well. But Warwickshire, good signs for them. But again, they're going to be missing Ian Bell and Chris Roach because he's been called up as well. So a key test for them and their depth of squad too coming up. Yeah,
and it's a little bit of a worry for Warwickshire because you look at their other batsmen and they're not firing as of yet. Apart from William Porterfield is doing fairly well, but some of the other averages are really concerning. I mean, Laurie Evans averages less than 20 at the minute. Varun Chopra, who's normally a figure of consistency at the top of the order, he's not giving them the starts. He averages, I think, about 25. So that is a concern. Obviously, it's early season wickets, so the averages are going to be down. But they do need someone to really step into Bell's shoes now.
Absolutely. The final game in Division 1 this week saw a really important win for Somerset against Sussex, and it was an impressive win because they won by an innings and 11 runs. Last week we sort of sat here and said, well, this is I think I sort of postulated this could be a really important game to see which way these two sides were going because Somerset had not a great start, not a bad start, but this win surely for them must give them huge amounts of confidence. Marcus Trescothick in the runs, and also I think quite important for them, some of their young players really performing as well. So a really big win for Somerset in more ways than one.
Yeah, it's a massive win for Somerset. Really, you look at them and they have been good in these opening weeks, but prior to this we didn't really know how good they were going to be, and this too. I mean, beat a Sussex side who were full of confidence was really impressive. And for Marcus Trescothick to get that 100 is a huge boost for Somerset. I mean, last year he didn't score a century, and you look where Somerset were in the table without his runs, and it does make a monumental difference. He is a leader of the side. They do draw inspiration from him, and it wasn't an easy century either for Trescothick this. I mean, it was a difficult batting surface, and for him to grind out that 100 was really impressive. And also Alvaro Peterson got some much needed runs, but like you say, the biggest thing perhaps for Somerset was the young bowlers coming through. I mean, Lewis Gregory, who apparently is a better batsman than bowler, which is it's got to be some batsman, because I think he took 8 at Durham last week, 9 this week, and then he did bat a number 11 this week with Somerset using 2 night watchmen. But he looks a really good prospect. And then Jamie Overton, we know, is a fiery character who can generate a lot of bounce and pace. And prior to the season, a lot of people were saying Somerset's fast bowlers weren't as strong as a lot of the other sides, but we might have to rethink that now. I mean, they're probably not as strong as your Warwickshire sides like that, but it's certainly a decent attack, and with the batting lineup they've got, things do look promising. I think for
sorry, Matt, carry on.
Yeah. No.
Carry on, Matt. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Sorry about that. I was just going to move on to Sussex. That was all. For Sussex, it was a case of the absentees catching up with them, I feel, a little bit. I mean, they've managed for so long without Luke Wright and Chris Nash, and obviously Matt Pryor as well for the last 2 games, and it was just a case of Ed Joyce not being able to bail them out once more, and as well, Luke Wells as well, he batted through an innings. I think he was the first Sussex batsman to do that since 2008, but I think you can only go on so long without these players, and it did show here.
I was just having a look at the table, actually, Matt, while we were discussing that one. Sussex, they're still top, but that win for Middlesex, the win for Somerset means it's awfully tight, as you would expect at this early stage, and that's got to be good for the fans and for everybody looking at county cricket, because we want to see a contest, really, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always incredibly difficult to call who's going to win the title, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years. It's always been a close-run thing, and again now it could be anyone's at the moment. You look at a number of sides have shown decent signs, and then with the odd weakness thrown in as well. So it's really intriguing stuff, and it's going to be interesting to see how it does develop now, especially now teams are starting to lose their England players as well. We're entering probably the next phase of the season, I'd say.
Absolutely, squad depth is going to be absolutely vital. One other point on the Somerset-Sussex game, the antics of Ashar Zaidi probably deserve a little bit of a mention. He tweeted something immediately after a dismissal, and he's now been given a 1-game suspension, if you like. So if he does anything else, he'll miss a game by the club. But what did you make of all that?
I mean, it's in this modern day. I mean, cricketers. I mean, they're all over Twitter, aren't they? Constantly, really. It's a little bit foolish. I mean, Zaidi's come from the Lancashire League, I guess, where it isn't such a massive issue. If you go and do that, you're not so much in the public eye. It isn't the cleverest thing. I mean, if you're in any sort of walk of life and you were to go and do that, something relating to your job, then you are going to get in hot water. But it's a difficult one. I mean, it's a modern day sort of problem, isn't it? And it's how you go about tackling that, really.
Yeah, what interested me most was I actually picked this up from an Australian. So they picked it up, and they went quite big on it, because they were saying, well, in international cricket and in Australian domestic competitions, all the phones are just confiscated. You can't do it. You just, because of the risk of corruption, and we all know that cricket competitions around the world have been targeted for corruption. You just can't do it. So that's the thing that surprised me, that for some reason in England it's okay for players to be able to tweet during the game, which surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I did wonder that myself, actually. I mean, the first thing, he's able to access his phone as soon as he's got out. It is an interesting point, really, that it is so accessible. I mean, you go on Twitter throughout the day, and it is full of county cricketers tweeting about the latest developments in their matches, and it is an interesting point, and it might be something that the ECB does need to look at, as in this modern society, that obviously the days of social media are prominent throughout. It is something that they may need to address.
Absolutely. We'll keep an eye on that one if there's any sort of social media developments as the season goes on. Well, let's hope that he's learned his lesson. I think he has. He's apologised. He said he regrets doing it. We all do silly things in the heat of the moment, and let's hope that that's an end to it. On to Division 2, and this round of fixtures really was quite heavily affected by the weather. There were 3 draws and only the one positive result. Shall we start with the positive result, Matt? We've got Worcestershire, who beat Derbyshire by an innings of 64 runs. That puts them on top of the table. And how much of this was down to the side Ajmal factor?
Well, I mean, everything Worcestershire touches is turning to gold dust at the minute. I mean, it's a tremendous start. People were looking at them, oh, they're going to struggle, they're going to be bottom half, but they've been brilliant so far. I mean, the Ajmal factor is massive. I mean, you look at a bowler of that quality in this division, he is going to wreak havoc most weeks. I mean, Derbyshire simply had no answer to Ajmal. I don't think, apart from Wayne Madsen, who was fighting the sort of lone battle that he was for much of last year, I mean, it's almost like a carbon copy for Derbyshire of what was going on last year. No other batsman scored a higher than 36, I think, as a combined total, which is, you're not going to win many matches with statistics like that. But Worcestershire, you have to credit the other players as well. I mean, they forced that result, Worcestershire, on the third day. They scored really, really positively. I mean, Moeen Ali came in and set the tone, and then Alexi Kovetsi, who came on the scene, a real promise, struggled a lot. And he's just started to come back to form now. He's got a decent 50 in the win over Kent, and then a 100 here. And then Gareth Andrew came in lower down the order, batting with his mongoose, I believe, and smashing Derbyshire to all parts, and Ben Cox as well. And they set the platform, and then you looked at Derbyshire trying to bat out that last day, and you were never confident that they were going to do that. And it's a good effort, but Worcestershire seems as well, they opened up the cracks for Ajmal to work off, and if you give him an opening, he is going to cause havoc in this division.
Yes, so Gareth Andrew coming in, and we should know other bats are of course available. That obviously, I say, puts Worcestershire top. They're leading the way by just a couple of points from Hampshire, who drew with Surrey. Gloucestershire drew with Essex, and Leicestershire drew with Glamorgan. Do you want to pick out any key pointers from those particular games, Matt?
For Hampshire and Surrey, it's another frustrating week. I mean, Hampshire, I think they've had 3 games out of 4 now that haven't even entered the final innings. They can't seem to get anywhere, and it's similar to last year actually. They drew 9, so as good as they can be, you need to get out there and play in games. But probably the big talking point from that one was James Vince scored another mightily impressive 150 off something like 170 balls. So his stock's risen yet further. That's him on top of the Division 2 run scoring list. Glamorgan and Leicestershire, the game that I tipped to go to, they couldn't quite get there. Leicestershire, they had a go. They drove Glamorgan close, but once again, Glamorgan's tail enders bailing them out. I mean, Graham Wagg for the second successive weeks, slamming another 50 odd balls and just denying Leicestershire. They had an opening. I think they needed to take 3 wickets with 18 overs remaining. They didn't quite have the X factor to do that, but it's another positive result for Leicestershire, and they're moving in the right direction. The game at Essex, this was an interesting match. The first 2 days were absolutely washed out, and then suddenly Essex ripped through Gloucestershire as they have done already to many a batting lineup. Darren Masters with another fifer, and then Ben Folkes and Ben Foster set up a winning position, and then it looked like they had Gloucestershire on the ropes until Alex Gidman and William Tavar combined to really nullify an Essex attack that hadn't been blunted at all this season. And incidentally, those 2 partnerships were the biggest 2 partnerships of the season to date. So on a pitch that suddenly went drastically from the ball moving around everywhere to abundantly flat pretty quickly.
And Tavare already sort of proving himself one to watch for the future, maybe.
Yeah, I think he's possibly only second behind Vince in the run scoring list, and he's looking good. He made a century in the opening round of games. He's definitely probably the one big positive for Gloucestershire this far, I'd say.
Good stuff. I was just trying to see if I can draw up have a look at the run scorers for us. So if we look at the averages by batting, I'll draw that up while I ask you another question, Matt. Just going back to Worcestershire, they've got Alex Hales on loan for a bit now, so that's an interesting one. They've done that because obviously Moeen Ali is going to be playing one-day cricket with England. What do you make of that move? Hales, he has struggled in first-class cricket, but that to me sounds like a move that could benefit both parties.
Yeah, I mean, he needs runs, Alex Hales, in first-class cricket. I think last year he averaged about 12 or something like that, which is for a player of his talents. I mean, I know his red ball cricket isn't his strength, but for someone of his ability, I mean, it's just ridiculously low. And for Worcestershire, it's a massive coup, really. But I mean, they'd have been thinking, oh, we're going to lose Moeen Ali. It's a massive part of their game. And I mean, Hales is no Moeen Ali in first-class cricket, but it's a massive plus for him. And there's a few sides who've made loan signings this week. It's another interesting modern development to the game. I think the loan signing, the emergency loan, you wonder, Worcestershire, they do have the odd batsman in reserve, so it's not exploiting the system because you can do that, but it's an interesting one. I mean, some of the other loan signings are more sort of realistic. You look at Essex have had to loan in Oliver Newby, and Glamorgan have loaned a seamer from Middlesex because their resources are absolutely depleted. But big ups to Worcestershire for getting that one through. It's a massive coup for them.
Yeah, and just going back to the stats we mentioned before, Matt, you're spot on. You've got James Vince at the top of the run-scoring charts, not just for Division 2, but the entire county championship, and Tavare is indeed second in Division 2. Obviously, Division 1, Balance, Bell, Cook, Joyce, Rogers, Robson. You make a very handy team out of those, and most of those will be in international action over the next few weeks, either for Ireland or for England. Let's move on to sort of looking ahead then, shall we? Round 5 of the fifth round of fixtures, if you like, gets underway tomorrow. We've sort of mentioned already, hopefully the weather holds good. Looks pretty good. It's a bank holiday though here in the UK, so there's bound to be some rain around at some point. Division 1, we've got Durham against Yorkshire, and the big story here is the return to county cricket of one Kumar Sangakkara. Looking forward to seeing how he performs against Yorkshire.
Yeah, it probably is the big talking point of this game. How Sangakkara is going to go. I mean, it's going to be it's another massive coup for Durham, and even financially as well. I mean, you'd imagine that Sangakkara being on the books is going to raise attendances at least slightly. I mean, he is obviously a legend of the game. It's going to be it's not going to be easy for him at Chester Street. He's chosen a difficult location to get himself into form, but it's a decent display of commitment actually from Sangakkara to the Sri Lankan cause. He obviously wants to make a decent lasting impact in England, and yeah, it's a real show of commitment. But Yorkshire are actually going to be losing Balance and Joe Root, so that's going to be difficult for them against Durham seamers. I think Bairstow did play in the Yorkshire seconds this week, so he may be back, and obviously they're going to have the skipper back, Andrew Gale. He won't have to make the difficult decision to drop himself this week, which is I think is a positive for them. I do think they missed Andrew Gale. I mean, Joe Root hasn't captained much at all really in the past, so that's a big positive. And how Yorkshire do bounce back from that, I mean, it's got to be a bit of a demoralising defeat, that one against Middlesex. As helpless as they were to Rogers' brilliance, it has got to affect them mentally, and how they respond could go some way to sort of telling what sort of challenges they are going to be this year.
Talking of bouncing back, Sussex travel to Lancashire, so they want to bounce back from their defeat to Somerset. But as we've talked about already, both of these teams will be missing key players. Lancashire, no Anderson, no Butler. Sussex, Chris Jordan away, and Ed Joyce will be off to play for Ireland soon as well.
Yeah, I think the Chris Jordan one, I'd say, is possibly a bigger loss than Anderson is to Lancashire. I mean, you look at Jordan, and he has real bite and fire to that Sussex attack, and you look at the players they can bring in compared to players Lancashire can bring in, and I'd say it is a massive loss to them. I mean, Sussex, thankfully, Chris Nash did play for the seconds. There is talk that Matt Pryor will be back and Luke Wright as well, but it's not exactly a difficult place to come back to. When you are going to be searching for form, Old Trafford, it isn't going to be very, very forgiving, really. It's going to be intriguing on that one. I think for Lancashire, the Josh Butler loss is going to be a pretty big one, I'd say. And their batting hasn't fired that well, and they are going to need Horton and Prince to really get some big scores on the board there. But another interesting one, as you say, how is Sussex going to respond? It might probably tell us whether they've got the mental toughness to challenge for the title.
And then we've got Somerset playing host to Nottinghamshire. I mean, Somerset's pitch down at Taunton early season has been fairly flat, but Nottinghamshire, as we've said, we've sort of touched on this earlier on in the show, then they're not in great form. So, which way might this one go?
it's a case of one team buzzing on confidence, another one really down on the confidence. I mean, if Nottinghamshire's batsmen could probably choose a place to go to get into nick, they would probably choose Taunton. If they don't score any runs here, then you've got to be really worried. I think Somerset are favourites. Well, with possibly the draw as favourite and then Somerset, but you look at how Somerset are playing. It's going to be tough, that one, for Nottinghamshire. Harry Gurney won't be there for them, so that's going to affect their ability to take 20 wickets. And Siddle did improve against Warwickshire, so that is a positive. But I think it's going to be tough for Nottinghamshire. I'd definitely make Somerset favourites.
And finally, in Division 1, we've got the battle between the two teams that were possibly, or two of the most impressive last week, with Edgbaston hosting Warwickshire against Middlesex. Again, both teams will be without some key players, but it's more or less sort of even, isn't it? Because you've got Bell, you've got Morgan. I don't know who else is going to be. Anybody else been picked from Middlesex? I can't sort of think off the top of my head that they have. So, but you'll no doubt put me right and tell me who's going to win.
Middlesex have done fairly well out of the England selection, really, because I mean there was a worry that maybe Steve Finn was going to get recalled, but it seems like England are going to let Finn have a prolonged spell for Middlesex, which is a huge plus for them. I mean, he's possibly the leading wicket taker in Division 1, and you look at Finn against some of those out-of-form Warwickshire batsmen, and I do worry a little bit for them. And Finn as well, with Tim Murtagh and James Harris is bowling well as well. So I think it's going to be tough for Warwickshire. I'd actually make Middlesex slight favourites. You look at, with Warwickshire without Wokes and Bell, I mean, the Bell loss is massive. As we've said, he's one of the leading scorers in the division, and to not have his runs is going to be significant for them, and it will be time for somebody else to stand up. And Middlesex have still got Robson and Rogers. I mean, I know they are missing Morgan, but they've still got their best two batsmen there, and Niall Dexter did show a bit of form as well in that chase. I think Middlesex, they've won 2 on the bounce now. They're riding high. I'd fancy them for this one. They won 4 games away from home last year, so they're pretty decent on their travels. So yeah, I'd go Middlesex.
I think for me, this would be the game that I'd like to go and see. It is putting two of the teams on form against each other. And there's enough, yes, they're both missing players who are playing for England, playing for Ireland, wherever, but there's enough class on show there to make that a really mouth-watering clash. If we move into Division 2, the first game, look at Essex against Leicestershire. I mean, Leicestershire, they've only played 2 games, but they've actually got enough bonus points in their draw. I think they're in 5th place. They're actually not doing too badly. In Essex, as we've seen, they've got a very strong bowling attack, but they are going to be missing Alistair Cook. So I see this one as reasonably evenly matched. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, Essex are having an injury crisis with their bowlers. David Masters is out for 2 to 3 weeks. Graham Napier's injured as well, so that's a massive loss. And as I say, they've had to load in Oliver Newby, and they're without Cook and Bapara, so suddenly Essex are looking a little bit threadbare. I think if you were to choose a time to play against Essex, this would definitely be it. Last year, Essex won this fixture by an innings. I can't see that happening this time. I mean, Leicestershire have been really impressive with the character they've shown. They've looked competitive. They've in every game. I mean, their bowlers aren't of the highest quality, but they just keep plugging away Leicestershire, and they are without Niall O'Brien, so they've been hit slightly by international call-ups as well. But Ranveer Sarwan has been in the squad for the last 2 games and not made it, so they'll be opening his 3rd time lucky for him. So if he comes in for O'Brien, that shouldn't be a massive loss. And Dan Redfern as well, I think he's in the squad as well. He's another one to come back. And it's after the toils of last year, where I think Leicestershire lost 8 to 9 games by an innings, they look a completely different unit this year. I mean, they'll probably be near the bottom of the table, but certainly in terms of competitiveness, there's real reasons to be positive this year.
That's absolutely great to see. Glamorgan against Worcestershire. I mean, Glamorgan made an absolute flying start, but they possibly just tapered off a little bit for me. And then Worcestershire, we've talked about with Syed Ajmal, they are a team to be feared wherever they go now, and Alex Hale's in there as well. So would you make them sort of slight favourites for this one?
Yeah, again, it's going to be the Ajmal factor again, I say, to make them favourites. I mean, Glamorgan's top order isn't scoring a lot of runs either. I think the highest individual score is only about 75, something like that. And against Ajmal, they need Goodwin and Allenby to find their form. I mean, they've been bailed out by the tail on 2 of their last 3 games. You can't see it happening for a 3rd time as resolute as they've been. Glamorgan have got somewhat of a fast bowler injury problem themselves. They missed Paul Hogan heavily against Leicestershire. If just to keep things tight, I mean, Graham Wagg is a wicket taker, but he will go at 4 and over to pick up those wickets. And Will Owen and John Glover both went to about 5 and over against Leicestershire. So they have loaned in I can't remember his name now, but a seaman from Middlesex who took 5 wickets on his debut and hasn't played since. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. But certainly Worcestershire, they're riding higher momentum, top of the table. It's going to be tough for Glamorgan, that one.
Okay, and the final game then, Kent against Surrey. This is the bottom team against the team third from bottom, but I get the feeling that Surrey are beginning to click a little bit, beginning to gel as a unit, and Kent, I think they've only played a couple of games, haven't they? So what would be your thoughts on this one?
I mean, Surrey could just do with a game, to be honest. I mean, since they got beaten by Glamorgan, I mean, it's been so frustrating against Essex. They only played 2 innings. Against Hampshire, they played about an innings and a half. They just need to get started, really. I mean, that's the problem they're having. You'd have to make them favourites against the Kent side, who have really struggled thus far. I mean, they've got decent players at Kent, but you look at sides like Worcestershire, who are performing greater than the sum of their parts. Kent are performing much weaker than the sum of their parts, you'd say. I mean, you've got Bollinger with the ball, Rob Key, guys like that, Darren Stevens, Brendan Nash. It's a decent unit. It's going to be but again, Kent, they just need something to sort of ignite their season. It's going to be an interesting one. You just hope for both these sides that the rain doesn't intervene and they can actually get a proper game out of that.
Good stuff. So as usual, we're going to finish by sort of saying if we had unlimited budget or whatever, which game would we go and see? I've already identified the Warwickshire Middlesex clash as the one that I'd like to hop across over to Edgbaston. Matt, if you could go to one of these games this week, which one would you go for?
I think this week I'd probably head off to Chesterley Street. I think watching Sangakkara, there's not going to be too many opportunities to do that in England remaining, and seeing how he goes and how Yorkshire respond as well is going to be really intriguing. And I'd say Chester Street. I mean, Durham haven't taken 20 wickets yet this season, which is a bit of a surprise. I know they've only played twice. And last year, this was actually the game that really kick-started Yorkshire's title push last year. Joe Root scored a big second innings century to take them. I think they chased down 300, which against Durham on the final innings at Chester Street is really impressive. So, yeah, I'd say this is probably the one that I'd go to.
Yeah, spot on. The Northern Derby. I think Joe Root got 182 in the game last year, and it was a game that they almost didn't look like winning until they did, so to speak. So let's hope for just as much drama this week as well. Matt, thank you ever so much for your time today. Really enjoyed chatting about county cricket with you as ever.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure as always.
And thank you very much for watching us here on Hotspot on Cricket World TV.